السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، كيف حالكم عسى طيبين؟ رجعنا لكم اليوم بفيديو جديد اللي هو راح يكون عبارة عن رياكشن للتليفون الجديد النازل اللي هو S25 Ultra. طبعا نحن عندنا القديم. خلينا نشوف الجديد كيف شكله، وإن شاء الله مساته تكون أفضل إن شاء الله. تابعونا. يلا خلينا نشوف التليفون وش ميزاته. طبعا راح تشوف التليفون في قناة مستر هوز ذا بوس، طبعا هو قناة معروفة للريفيو للتك ايتمز. طبعا خلينا نشوف الحين ال- التليفون ونشوف شو مميزاته بإذن الله. let's start.
This is the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and honestly, the moment you pick it up, you can tell that this thing is a slicker, neater, better designed phone than last year's. But it's only after spending a few hours getting deeper that I've started to realize this thing is next generation in a way that we've not really ever seen before. Like, the entire way that the company is even thinking about the smartphone is changing with the S25s. So these are the 8 key things that you need to know. Starting with the design, which is a pretty substantial upgrade. The S25 Ultra is 15 grams lighter than the S24 Ultra. It's enough to notice for sure. It's 0.4 millimeters thinner, which makes this the thinnest Ultra phone that Samsung has.
لا 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 لا. خلينا نضحك عليهم شوية. هذا صراحة تصميم القديم أفضل من الجديد. القديم أحلى. القديم أحلى. الجديد شكله نفس الآيفون الأطراف. القديم أحسن.
Has ever made. It's got a stronger titanium body thanks to a new, more compacted molecular structure and 29% tougher Gorilla Glass Armor 2 on the front, which is a pretty dicey one to test. But
طبعا على
Samsung
اليمين
is saying that
القديم
when they
وعلى
first
اليسار الجديد.
introduced Gorilla Glass Armor last year, they noticed immediately that when those new phones were coming in for repair, there was 60% less damage on average on the screens of those phones, thanks to this armor glass. So, you know, a further 29% improvement on that, well, it's not going to hurt. Now, to be really honest, I think the colors are a completeness. They're all boring. They tried to make them interesting with the names, like the hero color is called Titanium Silver Blue, and this one is Titanium White Silver. Let's call a spade. It's grey. Plus, they've colored the back panels, but not the sides, which to me just makes these all look like, you know, those badly
تصميم مو بحلو. تصميم مو بحلو.
matched refurbished car doors. Colors aside, though, I was extremely happy to see that after about 5 years of subjecting us to a slow, steady form of hand torture, Samsung has finally rounded off the
هي بس تعودنا عليه. تعودنا عليه خلاص.
corners of their phone, which, as obvious as a solution as that was, does make this feel more designed for their core demographic. You know, humans. But then when I properly started using the thing, I realized it's only a half improvement, since in the process of chopping off the corners, they've also chopped off the slightly rounded sides of the S24 Ultra. So those are now flat and sharp. To be fair to them, the flatness does give the phone a very clean, futuristic
تصميمه زين. القديم أحسن.
silhouette when you look from the front, but it does come at the cost of it still not being close to as comfy to hold as, you know, these more pebble-like phones like the Google Pixel 8a. Tell you what is very nice to see, the bezels are now even tinier, 15% smaller than the ones on the S24 Ultra, which is a small improvement, but still fantastic, because it means that within this thinner, lighter, less painful body, we are now also getting a slightly larger screen. It's gone from 6.8 inches.
كلهم كوبيكات أبل. كلهم يريدون ينقلون من أبل. لا. سووا تصميم كله خاص يا أخي. قديم أفضل.
To 6.9. Nice. And then you interact with the software. So last year with the S24 Ultra, one of the most impressive things about this phone was not actually the hardware, but more just how much Samsung had upgraded their One UI Android skin. It felt like a complete modernization. It was prettier, it was faster, it was more customizable. And somehow, I feel like they've made another similarly massive jump again this year. The S25s will ship with Samsung's latest One UI 7, and I freaking love it. It feels like this company has finally understood that we don't want our phones to look corporate, we want them to look bright and fun, we want them to be intuitive, and most of all...
بس نشوف لو في ترجمة بالعربي.
want them to look as naturally clean as possible. And they've delivered. The new software feels more visually consistent while being functionally even more
سوفت وير
customizable.
سريع
You can now do
اكيد.
what feels like anything you want with your widgets. Your
سوفت
quick
وير
settings now look more
البروسيسور
organized and again now
الرام،
have practically
بس
unlimited
تصميمه حلو.
rearrangeability and it is so fast. I never really felt like speed was an issue last generation, but this is in a new league altogether. It screams. You get the same 7 years of major Android updates, so that's all the way to Android 22, which to be honest, I don't even want to think that far ahead. And One UI 7 also plays a pretty big role in the new AI features. So I think it's pretty fair to say that with last year's phones, Samsung came in and they set the benchmark for smartphone AI. The AI suite on this phone, while of course still very early days, it stayed ahead of everything else released in 2024. And seeing what the S25s are able to do, I would say there is a not insignificant chance that that trend continues.
بس ال AI في الكاميرا انهانسمنت كان ضعيف، يعني حتى ابل الميجا بكسل اقل من سامسونج بس جودة الكاميرا افضل من سامسونج، فحتى الاي اي اي خلينا نشوف هذا
I don't
كيف
think it's all
شوفي.
great, but there is so much interesting AI stuff here that we can actually split what you're getting on the S25s into 3 subcategories. So the first is something called cross-app action.
شو رايكم في التصميم زين؟ اكتبوا في التعليقات، اكتبوا لك التعليقات.
Which is exactly what it sounds like. It means that you can now hold down your power button and give your phone a command that spans 2 different apps. So for example, when's the next Rick Astley concert?
انا ديسابوينتد يا اخي، تصميم يا اخي التصميم زبالة. انا كنت ناطر هذا التليفون صار فترة بس تصميم.
Add it to my calendar, and it will perform the search online, it'll find the details you're looking for, it'll strip out just the info you need, and paste that info in an intelligent way into your calendar. Now, the impression I get is that this is a Google feature that will come to other Android phones too. But what Samsung has done is worked with Google to make sure that Samsung's native applications, like Samsung Notes, can also be controlled by this. Now, I do think this feature is going to need work. I think it's a few years off being where it wants to be. Like, just for example, if you look closer here, you'll realize it's actually added a concert date to my calendar that is in the past. And even though this isn't final software and it will get better at launch, these are exactly the kinds of issues that you would expect to happen when you let your apps communicate with each other unsupervised. That said, once this does get to a stage where you could completely rely on it, does this not immediately feel like the next obvious era of the smartphone? This kind of intelligent life companion is exactly what these companies have been blabbering on about for over a decade. I mean, life companion was literally the tagline of the Galaxy S4, but now is the first time where it might actually make sense. I guess sometimes the 16th marriage is the one.
Wait, what?
So the second part of this AI equation are what I would call the iterative upgrades. So these are things that Samsung phones could already do that are now just better. So with the S24s, there was a smart select feature that let you tap on a part of your screen and the phone would just be able to highlight the thing of interest without all the rest of the fluff around it. Kind of like an intelligent screenshot. Well, now you have
عقبال ابل ان شاء الله ايفون.
AI select, which doesn't even need you to tap on the screen and it can also instant convert whatever
يمكن هذه الخاصية توصل ايفون 2030 يمكن.
you're looking at, ready to send it to someone else. Like you can tap drawing assist, and I think this is super impressive. You can reimagine that image in a different style without even needing to mess around with downloading it first, or even turn the video that's playing on your screen into a GIF for easier shareability. You can now generate custom one-of-a-kind stickers for when you text people. Everyone's favorite assistant Bixby.
يعني تقدر تسوي باي ستيكرز، تقدر تسوي تعدل الصور كل شيء. هذا مميز
Now
الحين.
understands more natural language. I wouldn't
شو الفرق بين S24 يعني في نفس الميزة AI، اللهم بس في شوية إضافات إضافية يعني.
call it a major
يعني
leap
أنت عندك
forward,
تيك
but it
توك
does build on
يضاف
this
لك.
idea that your phone is becoming this assistant that you can just talk to in a very human way and assume that it will understand what you want. Circle to search was another thing that came last year. Well, that can now also be used to pick up the background music in a video that you're watching on your phone. It's not dissimilar from what you can already do with apps like Shazam, but it's nice to have it in one place. When you're calling someone, you can now record that call. You can get a full transcription of that call in this really cool texting-like format, and you can even search through that entire convo to find specific nuggets or use AI to summarize it all. I really like this one. In the browser, there's a new option in which the phone will both use AI.
عندي سؤال، أنا الفرق بين الأبل تليفون آيفون الياباني والميدل إيست العربي، أن الياباني عنده صوت فلاش عن التصوير اوبن يعني 24 hours ما تسكره. فاذا عندك مثلا حاليا تسجيل الصوت لحمايه البرايفسي، هل كذلك في اليابان يقول لك قبل لا حد يتصل عليك يسجل لك الصوت، هل راح يقول لك ان هذا مكالمه مسجله لحمايه البرايفسي؟ كذلك نفس موضوع الكاميرات ولا موضوع ثاني؟ اكتبوا في التعليقات شو تظن، شو تتوقعون بهذا الشيء، كيف وراح ارد عليها ان شاء الله. اكتبوا في التعليقات. الان
to summarize the page that you're on, and then also read that summary out aloud back to you. Only thing is, Samsung really needs to improve their AI speech engine. Like, if you compare how natural ChatGPT's voice communication is compared to Samsung's, it's like a world apart. And then finally, for photos, the generative editor is now a little bit faster and quite a lot better at both removing distractions, but also, just as importantly, filling in the remaining void in a way that you can't even tell that they were there in the first place. And then Samsung's got this feature called Drawing Assist, where you make images. And this has now also been upgraded to allow you to use any combination of photos you've already taken, drawings with your stylus, and words to form your final output. There is now so much happening here that no one person is going to use all of these AI features. You might literally use one, but
I agree.
I'm at least happy to see that
مميزات كثيرة، من فاضي يستخدمها كلها، منو فاضي؟
it doesn't feel like the priority is on just adding a ton of gimmicks. For almost all of the stuff, I can see why someone might find it useful. And then the third AI pillar is that the AI on the S25s is finally personalized. And this is going to need a lot of detailed testing, but it feels like a pretty big step change. This is the first time that your phone is essentially able to read anything that's happening in your emails, your reminders, your browsing history if you want it to, and it's able to use that information to more accurately serve you. So for example, the phone might have ended up seeing in one of your emails that you have an unused coupon that's coming up for expiry soon.
بدأنا اقرأ ايميلاتك. No privacy.
And it can then send you a notification for that. Or even, it could go as far as to know that you need to go to the airport for a flight, and it can tell you that you should leave now.
No privacy.
Because it knows how far that you are from the airport that you need to go to, and that there's been a sudden surge in traffic. The other way that this will present itself is within the Now bar, which is this new thing that you get on your lock screen. It will show you your currently ongoing activities, but also over time, summaries of things like sports games that it knows that you'll be interested in based on things that you have Google searched for. So whether or not the execution is there, we need to find that out. Do you see what I mean about the level of thinking here? It definitely feels innovative as opposed to iterative. Samsung did also, while announcing this, spend quite a lot of time going on about how securely the whole thing handles your data, and it probably does. But regardless, this is also definitely a turning point in terms of how much access you're giving to the company. To become more useful, it is also having to become more invasive and expensive. Galaxy
They are invasive. They are يعني إذا لم تكون يعني مميز لازم تكون إنك تدخل في خصوصية الأشخاص، وهذا اللي صار حاليا، يدخلون أنفهم في شيء ما يخصهم، يقرون إيميلات ويشوفون شيء بحث في جوجل.
AI is only
خلينا أحسن شيء نرجع الأنالوج تليفون الكاتل وش اسمه أريكسون وهالسوالف أحسن.
going to be free till the end of 2025. And so the implication is that they will then start charging a subscription. And considering how soon that's coming, I'm pretty shocked that we still don't know what we will be charged for and how much it's going to cost.
AI بفلوس بعد. نضحك بعد شو نسوي؟
Cost. It could be $3 a month or it could be $20. My best guess is that the AI tasks that are done on device will
تشتري تليفون على أساس إنك تستخدم مميزات لازم تدفع كل شهر. تشتري تليفون بكم؟ $1500 أو $2000.
carry on being free, and then any ones that have to access the cloud will become paid. But even if that is the case, then that still leaves most of the best AI features locked behind a paywall, which would also explain why Samsung is investing so much in trying to become a leader in the space. You know, they see AI as a big part of their future income. But given that we don't know the answers yet, let's just put all that
expand their income.
aside for a minute. What about the hardware of the S25 Ultra? The stuff that if you buy this phone, you actually own. Well, if you'd asked me
قبل فترة اللي هو أمس كنت أشوف برنامج عن أن حاليا يسمونها هذه شركة انتل راح تصنع رقاق النانو 2 نانومتر، راح يصنعونها في اليابان. حاليا هم في حاليا في سامسونج، وفي شركة الشركات في تايوان يصنعون شرائح 3 نانومتر. فحاليا في شريحة جديدة اسمها 2 نانومتر راح بدون إنتاجها تقريبا بعد 3 سنين أو سنتين، 2026 تقريبا. فحاليا أمريكا انتل، شركة انتل برعاية الحكومة الأمريكية راح يصنعونها في اليابان. فأنا ما أتوقع أن هذا الجهاز يمكن فيه 3 نانومتر، حتى 2 نانومتر، مو 4 نانومتر، حتى 3 نانومتر حديثا ما أتوقع أنه فيه. أتوقع 4 أو 5، يمكن 6 بعد. خلينا نشوف.
What the single best standout thing about the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra was, I'd have said hands down the screen. All flagship phones have had brilliant screens with crazy brightness and high refresh rates for ages now, but the two things that have separated Samsung's are one, the durability, which has improved now, but also two, this anti-reflective coating that isn't nearly as gimmicky as you might expect it to be. This coating felt like it's single
شوف الديزاين، على اليمين الجديد وعلى اليسار القديم، منو أحلى؟ شوف التعليقات منو أحلى، على اليمين أو على اليسار؟
handedly cut away 50% of screen reflections, which in turn made the screen so much clearer than the rest. And that coating has now been upgraded again with the S25 Ultra. I wouldn't say the difference is as transformative as the jump last year, but really at this point it's just further cementing Samsung's display lead, with also now completely new Hop 3 display technology. No one's used it before, but Samsung's talking about this like it's some kind of miracle compound, saying that it should dramatically increase the touch response rate, image quality, and also battery efficiency of the screen. The battery itself, by the way, is still the same 5,000 mAh cell as before, which is good. They're saying that thanks to all the efficiency improvements, you can expect an extra hour of video playback per charge compared to even last year's phone, and it makes sense that they haven't expanded the battery given, you know, the thinner design, the thinner bezels, and the need to also fit an S Pen inside of here. However, I do also have a feeling that this is the year where we're going to start seeing the baseline for phone batteries go up significantly, which means that while Samsung was at the very top of the battery wars leaderboard last year, I'm doubtful it's going to stay at the top this year. And on a similar note, one thing that this phone doesn't have, which honestly at this point I just find puzzling, is magnetic charging. Apple has had it since 2020, and if you are going to wireless charge, this is just a better way of doing it, since it allows you to hold your phone up sideways, and it improves the efficiency of the wireless charging. Thankfully, the Taurus O-Stand 360 case, our sponsor, actually grants the phone that ability, which is the biggest ever run out. 15% depending on how you're measuring it, that it kind of is tweaked specifically for these S25 phones. The main thing though is just the Snapdragon 8 Elite is enough of a jump from last year, 30 to 40% depending on how you're measuring it, that it's kind of like moving up a whole new tier. Like this is the point where Android is back on track and in a lot of ways now actually ahead of Apple's performance. Been a long time since that was the case. The one thing to watch out for is just that some early devices that have had this chip have had thermal issues, which is probably why at the same time Samsung has fitted this phone with a 40% larger vapor chamber and a new thermal interface material for faster heat dissipation. Whether or not that saves it, we'll have to wait for the full review. But then, as well as that core performance perk, Samsung has also been working with the chip maker to add in 2 extra features. The Pro Scaler, which uses AI to basically upgrade any content that you watch on your screen. Like if something's really low resolution, your chip will apparently notice and figure out how to upscale it without you even needing to think about it. It's similar tech to what Samsung's 8K TVs use. Although I would be lying if I said I could actually notice the difference in person. But then, also, the camera. The chip is also supposedly tuned to specifically improve the low light performance in Samsung's phone, which, big if true, but I will only believe it when I see it. Speaking of which though, good to see that Samsung
أتفق معه. أنا صراحة سامسونج كاميرات قلت لكم يقولون لك مثلا كاميرا 140 ميجا بكسل، تشوف كاميرا أبل أفضل منها، لأن ال AI مال أبل أو السوفت وير اللي يعدل الصورة أفضل من سامسونج. أنا أشوف حاليا الكاميرا
Samsung hasn't completely forgotten about cameras amidst all the AI hoo-ha. So, the most obvious change is the 12 megapixel ultrawide has finally become a 50 megapixel ultrawide. Now, they are about 3 years behind a lot of other phones in getting there, but this is great news because the ultrawide was always the ugly duckling of Samsung's camera system. And it's now being upgraded, not just improves the ultrawide shots, but there's also a dramatic resolution bump to close-up macro shots, since it uses the same camera. And then, at least based on what Samsung is saying, the even bigger camera changes are the things that you can't see. So their underlying software, the Pro Visual Engine, has been upgraded, which they're saying means significantly faster shooting and also better quality and smoother zoom shots by inserting extra frames in between the animation. And the smoother aspect I can attest to. The better aspect is not as clear to me. Like, on one hand, this is a photo taken at 30 times zoom, and I can absolutely see the improvement in texture and detail on this year's phone versus last year's. But then, counterexample, I took this shot at 10 times zoom, and maybe because this is a face and it's harder for AI to understand faces as opposed to surface.
شو قلت لكم؟ عفوا كاميرا كاميرا سامسونج الجيل القديم أفضل من الجديد.
But here, I wouldn't say it's really better at all. There's a new AI image signal processor specifically designed to improve selfies. There's best face, which means that if you keep the motion photo feature on, then anytime after you've taken a shot, you can go back and both instantly make it either a boomerang or a slow motion clip, which is nice, but also use on-device AI to comb through and pick the best face it can from all the face options. Not a feature that we've never seen before, but I was surprised just how much this can rescue a otherwise lost image. Samsung's also saying that they've specifically worked with social medias like Snapchat and Instagram to uplift the quality of footage taken within those apps, but I also feel like they say the same thing every year, and I'm never really particularly impressed. This phone has the company's first ever spatial temporal filter, which basically allows the phone to distinguish between moving and stationary objects when you're shooting video, so that it can treat them differently. It means that the phone can focus on making sure that moving objects
يحطوا لك أسماء فانسي ناس إنك يقول لك السعر مرتفع بسبب هذه الأسماء المميزات اللي فيه. تنبور هذا أكل حبيبي حاطينه بعد في التليفونات.
don't look blurry, while also making sure that static objects don't look grainy. It is spot on exactly the thing that Samsung's camera needs to focus on. We just don't know yet if it's enough of an improvement to actually fix it. And then to add to that, the sound quality of your videos might well be improving too, thanks to a new audio eraser feature. Which is not dissimilar from what we've already seen Google Pixel phones do for a while now. But basically it means that the phone will pick up all the different types of noise in a video that you shoot, for example wind noise or room noise, and it allows you to adjust the levels of them. And then the sprinkle on top is a bunch of new pro features, like 10-bit HDR video recording, which has 4 times the dynamic range, but then at the same time I kinda hate it because it just makes your screen unnecessarily bright when you watch it, and things like log recording, which gives you ultimate color flexibility for editing afterwards. So I would say not one of the biggest on-paper camera upgrades, but then if they do pull off all the software wizardry that they're saying they will, it could still become one of the most meaningful ones. And that's the S25 Ultra. Mostly great design changes, massive software improvements, but a lot of those will come to other Samsungs. AI with lots of potential, but also a lot to prove. And then hardware-wise, pretty close to the best of the best.
يعني المحصلة زبالة. قصده يقول لي زبالة. تليفون والله ما أنصح فيه. ما أنصح فيه. ما أنصح فيه. بالنسبة للتصميم أنتوا اكتبوا في التعليقات التصميم هل كان مناسب ولا لا. اكتبوا في التعليقات وبعد شوفوا التصميم كيف، لأن صراحة تصميمه القديم تصميم أحلى، وكذلك مميزاته مو قوية ذاك الصوت يعني نفس يعني حتى الكاميرا القديمة أفضل. هذه السنة أبل 16 راح يفوز إن شاء الله، راح يفوز. ما راح أنا طبعا أحب سامسونج، بس للأسف أبل راح يفوز السنة. أنا صراحة